Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, back on the PlayStation 5 to take a look at another premium ship in World of Warships Legends. Today we'll be talking about HMS Lion, a Tier 7 premium Royal Navy battleship. For this review, I'll start with some history, then we'll jump into the ship in the game, your commander choices, stats, then finally finish off with some gameplay. If you do think part of this is going to get boring, I've left some time codes in the description for your convenience. As a brief note on the history of the design of this ship, this is essentially an interpretation of a King George V battleship, as though it was completed with 16-inch guns. A lot of the history of the design process for the King George V is included in my Monarch review, which I have linked below. Now, the reasons the King George V wasn't built with 16-inch guns is essentially that they couldn't build it with an acceptable amount of protection that could reach 28 to 30 knots. These original designs were intended to keep within the 35,000-ton weight limit imposed by the London Naval Treaty. And there was just no way to cram as much ship as they wanted in terms of speed, firepower, and protection within that weight class, at least with 16-inch guns. The game lists the year of the design of the Lion as 1938, which is sort of kind of true, because this was more or less the time when these designs were sort of kind of being finalized. It was 2 years after the London Naval Treaty, and let's just say the sequel was not as successful as the original. In this time, the Admiralty had at least looked at ships as large as 48,500 tons. Ultimately, a design of around 40,000 tons was decided as the most practical of the 16-inch ships, since it would allow the ship to work out of the largest number of Royal Navy ports for the firepower they could get out of the design. Two ships were laid down in 1939, named HMS Lion and HMS Temeraire. But with war breaking out that year, construction quickly stalled on everything other than the gun mountings for the 16-inch guns. Essentially, these were intended to be the Mark II versions of the gun mounted to the Nelson-class battleships. There were several attempts to get the construction going again, subject to new requirements from lessons learned through the first few years of World War II. The design actually would balloon to a size of 48,000 tons again after being laid down, and the ship length increased by an additional 30 feet. And due to these redesigns, 2 additional revisions to its main battery, creating the Mark III and Mark IV. In 1942, the Admiralty officially changed its stance on how the Royal Navy intended to project power and prestige, declaring that the aircraft carrier would be the centerpiece of the fleet. This didn't bode particularly well for the stalled-out Lion program, as indeed HMS Vanguard was already well on its way, thanks in part to using guns and turrets that were already developed. A year later, the 2 ships of the Lion class were cancelled, and the ships were scrapped. The only parts of this program that were kept were the 16-inch 45 caliber Mark IV guns, which were used in testing up until 1948, when the Navy finally sought to shut that program down as well. The Lion enters World of Warships Legends as one of the most thoroughly average battleships at the tier. And I actually do kind of mean that as a compliment. It does have a few perks here or there that point back to how Royal Navy ships are portrayed in World of Warships Legends. But this ship really is neither surprising nor disappointing. Her strengths are actually very well captured by wargaming on the screen, so I'll just leave them there. As a 16-inch battleship, you do have the advantage of being able to punch almost anything on a cruiser that isn't its turrets, conning tower, main belt, or, if they're lucky, icebreaker. Though shooting with HE and 16-inch guns will pretty much always result in a penetration, there are a few odd surfaces at higher tiers where a battleship may still struggle, and in this case, you can get through 100 millimeters of armor thanks to the 1/4 penetration. Admittedly, this isn't a huge difference, but there are some ships out there who will definitely feel the difference. The Lion does come with excellent heals, like many of the other Royal Navy ships. There's a minor downside that you only start with 2 of them, but even with 2, the healing potential of this ship is really noticeably better than 3 heals on just about any other non-Royal Navy ship. Wargaming also lists superior AA. That's not entirely true, at least not out of the box. The Lion's anti-aircraft rating makes you have a decently well-defended battleship, but I would agree with this because you have access to and will probably be using defensive fire AA, which will double the effectiveness of your anti-aircraft, and at that point you may as well ask God to have mercy on their souls. Her weaknesses include a T-shaped citadel that extends above the waterline to the outside of the ship. This is the same sort of fairly unpopular citadel that both the Poltava and Florida have, though I would say it is nowhere near as disastrous as it is on those two other ships. Now this is not uncommon, but most of the outside of this ship is plated with 32 millimeters of armor, which is enough to bounce all the AP you'll face, if properly angled, except for Yamato, but it does make you rather susceptible to a lot of HE fire. If there are any other drawbacks to the ship, I might say that the lack of a plane here hurts, but it may be that the ship's model is constantly reminding me that I shouldn't have parked my car behind this garage door, and I might have been better off finding another purpose for this catapult. Overall, the line is very competent for a Tier 7 ship, and if you want something that will perform reliably, this is an enjoyable boat. If you're looking for gimmicks though, you won't find very many here, so take that as you will. I would say the Lion has a pretty broad choice in terms of what you want to do for commander. The first thing a lot of people will consider is probably Cunningham. He will increase your range and accuracy. You're going to end up with some better turret rotation one way or the other, and you may pick up some extra damage with your AP at the expense of speed. This isn't a super terrible trade, particularly if you're confident with your AP use, but your battleship will feel more like it's moving at a pretty leisurely pace for a Tier 7 battleship, should you choose to do that. The downside to Cunningham is that the Lion only comes with 2 heals. They're very good, powerful heals, but the Lion is reasonably vulnerable to HE damage, and extra fires you'll be picking up with Flammable Cannoneer may put this in the traditionally annoying category. Madden pretty much swings to the opposite side of this, sporting very little to help you with your offensive capabilities. You're going to be doing this because you want to reduce the total number of fires that you can take on your ship, maybe even to reduce the chance that your ship will catch fire or flood in the first place, and of course adding up to 2 additional heals may reach the point of total overkill on this boat, but you may find this is nice to have and be able to use your heals with a little bit more freedom. A couple of final thoughts. Building into secondaries is a total mistake here, and I wouldn't go running with scissors because this isn't really a brawler. Downside to Madden is that unless you inspire him with someone else, there's nothing here to help you hit anything at all. Jellicoe does reasonably cut the middle ground here, and in this case you're probably going to be doing this for fully packed. You're going to get a 3rd strong heal and rely on Jellicoe's base trait, which will make it even a little bit better. Like other base commanders, his abilities are pretty unremarkable, but boosting your AA capabilities in this ship, making it more stealthy and even faster, aren't exactly bad choices. I will note that having fully packed does give you a 3rd defensive fire AA consumable, and that can be really invaluable in matches that include an aircraft carrier. Once again, your accuracy here is going to come from your inspirations, or not at all. As we come to stats, we're going to be looking at the stats right out of the box. I'll probably make several references to the Monarch for what I hope are obvious reasons, but otherwise I'll let you know where the Lion is against the rest of the field. Beginning with hit points, you have 67,900, and that is kind of a C+ or B- territory for a battleship at Tier 7, and it is a nice improvement over Monarch, having more than 14,000 hit points than that particular ship. Your armor scheme is a bit on the light side at 19 to 381 millimeters, but the Lion can still effectively bow tank Tier 7 battleships. Against the guns of the Yamato and Conqueror, there's not much in this armor scheme that is going to protect you from taking direct hits through either the nose or the sides, so you will need to practice angling and use your maneuverability against them. One of the hidden disadvantages of this over the real and fictionalized versions of the King George V class battleships is your citadel actually rises above the waterline, and it enjoys relatively little protection with a slightly thinner belt than the Monarch has. Tier for tier, this isn't Nelson levels of vulnerable. The citadel is only slightly above and below the waterline here in this T formation, but I would not be surprised if lucky and good cruisers with effective AP can exploit this. In fact, it would be so unsurprising that I was confident I didn't need to let somebody actually try it. So, could be wrong there, probably not though. Finally, you do finish out survivability with 25% torpedo reduction, which is 3% better than Monarch, but still 5% worse than average. The Lion comes with 9 16-inch guns arranged in 3 turrets, in the standard sort of 2 forward and 1 to the rear configuration we see in all sorts of other battleships. They reach 300 meters further than Monarch and are very nearly to the 17.2 kilometers, which would be average for the tier. Their reload is nothing special, but about what you'd expect at every 30 seconds. The 45-second turret traverse is tied for slowest battleship at the tier, but it's tied with basically every other 16-inch battleship, with the exception of the Lenin, so between the 16-inch guns and Russian bias, it's pretty much what you'd expect. You have the most powerful HE shells, dealing an impressive 6,900 per shell, with a 46% fire chance. Though the Champagne has a higher fire chance shell for shell, you have an extra 3 guns, making the Lion the best battleship for starting fires at the tier, though you do lag a bit behind the Monarch in its potential damage due to the other Royal Navy battleships having better rates of fire. But this is still better than Vanguard, at least until it gets another few buffs. Your AP damage is fairly average at 12,600 in spite of the large caliber. This again tends to give you pretty average DPM and single volley potential. One thing worth noting about the Lion is that it does have shorter fuse times than most battleships, which is definitely a double-edged sword. Against well-protected battleships, we'll say German battleships for example, this means higher damage shots tend to be into the upper belt, where you're more likely to score decent regular penetrations rather than risking it all for a big hit at the waterline, and then walking away with several more misses as shells hit the water and nearly immediately detonate. It also means that while your guns are large enough to overpen the bow of most of the Tier 7 cruisers, there's a decent chance that the shell will detonate before it gets to the Citadel, but that's still going to be better than bouncing. The good side to this is that ships with lighter armor, thinner hulls, or battleships that do not have layered Citadel defenses are very easy to penetrate with these shells. This basically translates into broadside cruisers taking fewer overpenetrations and more vulnerable battleships like Yamato, Vladivostok, still taking critical damage quite easily. Then one note about the secondaries, Monarch previously had the worst secondaries at Tier 7. With the Lion in the game, at least we can say that they're tied, but suffice it to say they're fairly worthless even as far as Legends secondaries go. Though the characteristics that Wargaming has given for this ship is that it has good AA, this is really only sort of kind of true. You have a decent 82 rating, and you do end up with 463 DPM at 3.5 kilometers. That's quite a lot, but sadly this 4.5 long-range AA is giving away some valuable airspace that means the carriers can more easily fly near you, and you will need to be pretty buddy-buddy with an ally before any of this good AA protection is going to really rub off on them. It's more likely that this sort of arrangement will mostly discourage people from directly striking you. I sense that the good AA description is justified by access to the defensive fire AA ability, which is clearly the better choice for this ship, and will double all the damages you see for a short period. And when that is active, I will agree that this ship is definitely well protected from strikes by enemy aircraft. When getting around the battlefield, the Lion may be the most average battleship at the tier, having just about average speed, an average turning circle, and almost equally average 15.8 second rudder shift. This means that she's faster and turns technically worse than the Monarch, but I seem to run into fewer times when I found her maneuverability to be disappointing. Some of that is more attributable to taste, but the higher speed does mean that she plays a little bit more of the mobile game rather than relying so much on a plodding bow tanking strategy. Finally, we have concealment. Almost every battleship at Tier 7 has roughly the same sea detectability, plus or minus 200. Lion comes in with 100 less than average, which is probably a minor advantage, but nothing that's really going to change the overall trajectory of your life. Roughly the same thing is true by air, And like most battleships with 16-inch guns, you're very noticeable when hiding in smoke, a disadvantage that I'm sure has changed the outcome of probably less than 1% of matches played. Lastly, we have consumables. You do start with your normal battleship damage control party. Use it wisely. After that, you have a repair party, which is powerful. The default here is listed at 1357 per second, so it's about 2% of your overall HP every second, rather than the standard 1/2 of 1%. Fully spec'd, Madden can more than double this, which may be a bit overkill, but does mean you can endure a lot of fire, flooding, or even if you're creative, recoup a lot of ramming damage. Like most battleships, you have enhanced secondary targeting, and like most battleships, this is probably a mistake. There's nothing about the secondary array on the Lion that really makes it worthwhile. Instead, you should probably swap this out for DFAA, which isn't totally awesome, and hopefully you won't have to fight against a carrier, but this is really the only reasonable choice, and at least while activated, it will give you a brutal amount of AA, for about 40 seconds. Now, as we finally get into some gameplay, we're going to be on Hotspot. I will go ahead and immediately put my commander up on the screen. There's really no surprises here. This is pretty standard for what I like to do with Royal Navy battleships, and the Lion is no different. In fact, its exceptional heal means that I played a lot more of this ship with this particular build than I did with the other builds. So, not going to apologize too much for that. I think this really fits pretty well, at least if you want to play this ship aggressively and take a lot of damage for your team. In this particular game, I don't know how to describe it. This isn't really what you're supposed to do with this ship. I'm just going to have fun. I like this ship. This is a little bit more doable in this particular boat than I think it is in, say, the Monarch. I would be very surprised if I was able to pull this off, even though I'm not going to be sailing around with my maximum 29.5 knots. I think it's a little bit over 30 with the flag that everybody equips to everything. In any case, the one part that we're not going to show off today is the defensive fire AA. It is pretty effective. It's not extraordinary, but if people are going to fly over your ship, they're going to take a lot of damage pretty quickly. So I definitely enjoy that. And even when playing it with Jellicoe, it's a pretty good fit. In any case, there's a Richelieu way out there. We're going to guess he hasn't moved too terribly much, so we're going to try to blind fire out there, because we'll probably get reloaded by the time we can see him again. We do get a little bit of love there, just 2,200 damage. Unfortunately, we don't set a fire. I do recommend shooting a lot of HE in this, like you do in a lot of Royal Navy battleships. One way to make this pretty effective is to kind of juggle different battleships, set fires on different ships, then switch targets. There are some people who run around with baked potato skill, and if they're doing that, sometimes you just want to leave them burning with 2 fires rather than risk shooting them with HE again. But as you can see, I'm kind of going where angels fear to tread, but clearly there's at least one angel that wants to jump in here. We do go ahead and shoot that Fletcher in front of us. It doesn't look like he had the opportunity to launch torpedoes at us. He could have. So we're going to go ahead and back up. I don't think he did. Now that our guns have been silent for 20 seconds, we are no longer spotted. We're going to cozy up to this beach for a second. It's going to give us just a little bit more cover, just in case any torpedoes are coming. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they're not, but at the same time, I want to be at least a little bit careful. I'm not sure why, I never did it before, but... We look to our right, there is a Tirpitz. For the moment, we're going to ignore them. That is a little bit concerning. That there is a person who clearly drove through the middle of the map and went to A, and is now behind us. That's not great. We're going to very daintily take our 40,000 ton battleship and scooch it behind this island. Fortunately, we have our guns are not coordinated in any fashion. Obviously, you can see they're on different reloads, and all of the barrels are aiming at different things. You could even argue that I'm aiming at different things. But mostly we're trying to shoot center mass here because we're shooting HE, and really we just need to hit the darn thing. The idea here is obviously try to get the fires going. We've got a little bit of damage ticking away there. This Tirpitz has plenty of things on its mind, but our rear gun is faced in his direction, so we're gonna add a little bit of damage over there. Probably not, because it looks like we missed. But another center mass shot. We're looking back over at the Tirpitz for our rear gun. We got 2 additional fires, and either this guy immediately puts the fire out, or he's running Baked Potato. And Baked Potato is fight fire with fire. That's the unofficial name of it. If you think I'm picking on you for using fight fire with fire, the best player I know in the game uses it too. And I have no way of defending my position if you want to bring that up with me. I just like to call it Baked Potato because I'm never going to use it. It's not true. I probably will. Anyway. So it looks like the Richelieu is coming in here. You can kind of see, I look to the left because there's that North Carolina that's getting kind of dangerously close. We're trying to keep a little bit of island paradise in between us and them. So this is a terrible place to be. You should not drive a battleship here, but if you do, you can sometimes have some fun. You can clearly see we're being shot by a destroyer. His guns are not the part of that equation that I'm really afraid of. More importantly, we've got this North Carolina that's getting dangerously close to us. We're going to aim for his superstructure. We get a decent chunk of damage there. No fires, probably because he just damaconned the first fire. You can see we've popped out behind the island. I don't remember if this was intentional or not to draw torpedoes, but we're going to start moving forward again. We're going to aim in at the bow, and that was terrible. But the idea there is with 16-inch guns, North Carolina can be penned through the nose with these guns. You will need to aim better than I did there. Unfortunately, the Richelieu has a really good view of my belt. Thankfully, it only goes a little bit above the waterline and a little bit below the waterline. Doing kind of a half-botched drive-by. We do get a good chunk of AP damage there. And the AP, in this case, is working pretty well against the North Carolina because the North Carolina also has a T-shaped citadel like me. So if this whole thing is illustrative of anything, I think what I just did there would be a little bit more difficult, if not impossible, with the slower Monarch. It would be at least as bad of an idea to try. Still got the AP going. You can see just how much health a high-level Madden can repair if you spec into him. Oh, that's really disappointing. Both of our front turrets just took a ton of damage. We still got 16,000 hit points. Our secondaries, as worthless as they are doing a little bit of work back there. And now we've got our heal back up again. You can see just how good you can make this heal. And we more than double our hit points, even with taking a shot in the middle of that. So this is one of the things I really do love about the Lion, is if it does have one gimmick, it's kind of this. If it has a second one, it is probably the DFAA, which in any reasonable world it would have an aircraft, but it doesn't. And you could more or less accomplish the same thing, but the DFAA is a little bit better for specifically shooting down aircraft. Fires that continue to burn on the Richelieu finally do tick us over the high caliber. We'll take one moment to mention that you can see that I've lost both of my front guns. I wish I could say that that is a unique experience. I don't have access to the hit point pool of the individual turrets. I can tell you that I have lost both front turrets in this ship multiple times, and just the week that I was really playing it a lot, I think I'm the only one who has. I'm not sure if it's a case where it's just like I'm colossally lucky and lose the turrets all the time, or if it's that they actually have low HP. You can see for a while I was kind of trying to earn some vengeance on that French battleship, because how dare he have turrets and me not. But we get through that fight again, and we're back up to 36,000 and a half hit points. And that's really what this ship is good at. We wasted a lot of people's time by essentially tanking a whole bunch of damage, and then the game ends. Now, we were way too close for most of that, and we really didn't get to use our speed. We didn't get to use our DFAA, but trust me, it's there. It shoots down airplanes. To the extent that maybe the turrets are a weakness, I guess there's your warning. But I will go ahead and close with my final thoughts on the Lion. I happen to like it, and that's in all cases except if I have to fight a Yamato, in which case that tall citadel is going to be a bit of a problem, and you better hope that you're far enough away to try to help its hits into the side of your belt. Other than that, I would say that the ship's pretty fine. If you're thinking about picking this up, it's not the kind of ship I would personally mortgage my house in order to buy. I know it's really quite expensive if you want to whale this through loot boxes. If you're real close, maybe it is worth spending a few to get the ship. It's not bad. I would say that I wouldn't be surprised to see this ship again at some point. I don't have any information about when or how or where that would happen. I don't think it's going to be good enough or popular enough to make the list of ships that really doesn't show up again, but I think it's the kind of ship that's kind of weird because it is so much better than the Monarch. For most people, I think that it would kind of make the Monarch pointless if they brought it back. So maybe it'll be longer than I expect. In any case, those are my thoughts on Lion. Like I said, it's fine. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, I hope to see you on the next one.